Okay, so is it visible to everyone?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. So yes, I'm here to give you some insights about Google Summer of Code. What is it and how to approach for it? Uh, Let me first ask you: do we have people from every year? Uh, Come on. Don't say in the chat. I am not on the chat. I can't see chat. Just talk in the microphone, please.
Yeah, SE to BE are there.
Okay, okay. So, okay. Uh, we have she already told us that what GSOC is in a very brief, but please, someone who already knows some of these things and has searched for it and been looking for into it for some time, please share your information, whatever it may be, whatever you know, please.
Basically, it's me, Roshan Raut from
Yes,
TIT. So actually, GSOC can be defined as it's an open source program which is mostly made for the students and mentors to promote the open source culture and to perform on some of the open source projects. It's not basically an internship from Google, but it's just a student and mentor program to promote the open source projects and culture.
yes, sure. Yes, just as he said, don't consider this as an internship, but yes, we look for internships when we are studying, but uh, this is something else that opens up a new door for us, and I'm going to tell you everything how it is a beneficial thing. So as he said, GSOC is a worldwide program started by Google around 15 years ago. And uh, what it basically does is Google opens up its platform. Google is just the organizer and the organizing platform. It doesn't do much in this regard. The only thing Google wants is to promote open source. So what do you mean by open source? Again, come on, someone.
Software that is open to all, like the source code is available and anyone can make changes according to themselves.
Yes, yes, exactly. So what exactly is there are companies like many of the companies and the Google, Amazon, Microsoft. They work on softwares and everything. So uh, operating systems like let's take Windows. So can you see the source code of Windows anywhere in the Microsoft or any GitHub page? No, you can't, because it's a closed source. It's its own Microsoft didn't make it open source. But what open source software is that anyone in the world can see and make changes in the code. So that doesn't mean that you make changes in the code and that will be accepted as it is to be distributed all over the world. There are means maintainers and reviewers for the code that you submit, and they will see if it confirms it is good or it is acceptable, it should be done or not. And based on that, they will accept your code, and yes, it will be distributed worldwide for you. So to promote this open source community, what open source community does is anyone can come and contribute to any kind of open source project. So be it for any any product for any company. So let it be VLC, let it be GCC compiler, let it be LLVM compiler, and so on. You can find the list in the Google Summer of Code projects in the previous year. So to promote students to come into the open source community. So that's why the program is made by Google. So I'm going to tell you why you should do Google Summer of Code, what you will be doing in GSOC, and how to approach. Now, not just Google Summer of Code, I also encourage participating in other things like hackathons, do hackathons, do competitive coding also, and there are much more of things to do rather than just doing the assignments given by the college. So why you should do it? So now the first point, the experience of working on an industrial project. Exactly, you must be working on assignments that college give you, or the those are defined in the university curriculum. So when you see, even yeah, when you are on in the second year or third year, you are doing some assignments like make some student directory or something like that, and calculator or more scientific calculator and more like that. But these things aren't in the industry. Means yes, there is a calculator, but it is much more sophisticated. It is much more functional and robust. It should be right, concise, and precise, and everything. So also, yeah, when if it's a calculator, it should be, a mobile, means it should work on much more platforms, a computer, mobile phone, and now you have smartwatches that also version 2. So you also have to take the constraints in the hand, that it should be efficient, power, the application should also be a power efficient too. So to know these things in the industry, what happens is that we get confused when we pass out, and we don't know how to pick up the pace with the industry itself, because you will not be working on some student database or something like that when you are in a company, or not even a company. If you also want to start some startup, or you want to make your own product, that you have to take care all these things into the account. So also you must be wondering how working in a actual global project, which everyone use, which we everyday use, is made. So working on an industrial project is having an experience on that project before you pass out is a really good thing, and it's the biggest selling point to do GSOC. Secondly, the exposure you get, exactly the exposure, the meaning of exposure here, I mean is you get to know much more things than you are in the college. Yeah, you get in the college. So let's say you are doing some project, and you get to for GSOC there will be mentors, so you get to know mentors, what will be working on, on which country he resides in, where he was working, where he studied, what knowledge he has. He will impart that knowledge to you. uh, you will get to know new platforms to work on. You will get to know new technology, and you will get to know what a simple language that you learned in your course, and how it is used in real time, and all the APIs, that how they interact with it. So this exposure is also important. Also, there's a sense of achievement. Yes, let's say you complete GSOC, and you contribute some code for some open source project. Now, what sense of achievement gives you that the code that you wrote, the feature that you wrote, the optimization you did, everything that will be distributed all over around the world, and people will be using it, and that's a big sense of achievement. Okay. I will come back to the sense of achievement on my experience, and you will get to know how it feels with it. Then the future opportunities, that this is like also one of the most important thing that GSOC brings. Let it be, if you be seeking for job, or you want to do post graduation, or you want to start a startup, anything. For and also the job even though if job is not technical, even the job is non technical, even if your post graduation is non technical, this helps in the future opportunities, because when you know new technology, when you know how to work in teams, when you know how to work, yeah, on a global level project, you get to know how to do that when you graduate. So uh, also having this thing, also knowing these things, knowing these people, knowing this community, will help you to get a better chance to have a good post graduation. And even though for PhD, having such thing on your uh, uh, resume has a big impact. And another thing is the communication and networking. this is also an important part. You will come to know many people that are you will be added into the groups of the people who are working in GSOC. You get to know what projects they are working on. If you have a friend who is also doing GSOC, you can help each other. You can get to know what other people are doing, what other people are facing. If you are facing any problem, you can ask other GSOC students for anything. Mentors are let me tell you, mentors are very much expert. That's why they are the mentors for these projects. So these experts have been working on the projects for years and years. They must be some kind of a PhD teacher in a big respected college, and one-to-one communication for that project with that such kind of a mentor is a huge thing. Okay, so profile building, exactly just what I said. You get to write on your resume what you did, name of Google, some more of code on your resume is also a big noticeable thing. And yes, there's of course money. There in each, I think uh, for many years the stipend has been increasing, and I think it will be around $3,000. So that's also a positive thing. And you know, $3,000 is very much. You can get just reimburse your half of college investments. Okay. So what you will be doing in GSOC is that you will get to learn new technology. So let's say you select us open source project in the Python, and you know Python is a language that just not used for what we have been using it for in the college. So and we know the Python is a very high level language, and we use it for machine learning and AI applications, image processing. But also Python is also used in web development for a long time. Python is almost replacing PHP in web development. So knowing these things and how it can be used, how those interfaces, how those APIs work in real time, you will get to learn this technology before you are graduated. Also, again, the developing in an industry level project is a big thing. And how to get uh, this development is also just not for your personal learning. What you will do is that not only you will you have been writing assignments in, let's say, C or C++, Java or anything. So you just write a program, you compile it and run it. You don't know anything about what environment it is doing. Real time projects work in an environment work in a defined environment. What means that there yeah, you don't know the underlying architecture of what the computer you have been using. That the processor might be ARM, the processor might be x86. It could be any Power PC. It could be any kind of processor. But what you are doing is you just writing a program and compiling it. But knowing the environment around it, how to develop, how to know the environment variables is a big thing. And also you will be communicating, networking, and sharing knowledge with professional experts. Exactly, just what I said before. So knowing these people, communicating with them, you also develop your communication skills, the mail writing skills, the code writing skills. How to write a better code is also a big thing. So let's get to the more important point: how to do this. So first point I would say is discovering your field of interest. Uh, People who have been approaching me before, I have told them these things, this thing at very first, that you should find a field or subject of your interest to do this. So let it be anything that you have been wondered when you started engineering. In the first year you were doing the general subjects which you did in the 11th and 12th. There was an introductory part for like for programming, and you must have wondered how these things work. I want to know. So uh, if you have so much interest in some such kind of thing, pick that thing and stick to it. If you want to do that, means yeah, I'm not saying just do that thing. There are one application of a thing. I mean, there are many applications of single product. Just like I said, a Python language is used in multiple places. So I'm not saying you don't explore, but you exploring that you have interest in Python language can open much more doors for you to explore the things like uh, front end and web development or machine learning, AI, image processing. So selecting of such kind of subject is important, and you can analyze yourself like uh, if you're in third year or second year or fourth year, you can select. You can see what you have been interested in throughout last years and last months, and what intrigues you much more, what makes you question some of the technology out there, that how this thing work. Like when I started engineering the first year, I didn't know anything about computers. Means I had used computers like in a general way, but I didn't know anything about C language or C++ language. But when I was introduced to C language or C++ at the start, I didn't even know what that hashtag include does, and how these characters that I'm typing on the screen are understood by the processor itself, and how is it running it. So this interest in that subject took me to the third year, and I said yes, GCC looks interesting, and we have been using GCC in the college, and it's the compiler, and yes, that's how I get to know how a processor runs these things. So this is the first thing at discovering your field of interest. Along with that, you also know you have to also know the program that you want to do. Google Summer of Code. Visit this link. This link will have everything, every tutorial, every information that you need to do successful GSOC. So please visit. It has much more description than what I'm saying right now, and that description will help you at every stage for this program. And second thing is shortlisting your organization, and this shortlisting this organization is based on the field of interest that you chose to do the project in. So yes, the first line that says there is some competition, but you should know what kind of competition it is. Means there have been competitive exams, and you get ranked, and based on rank you get selected into the universities. It is not like that. But let's say there have been participation of organizations like 150 to 200 organizations open source, and there are thousands of students from all over the world applying for this thing. So not everyone can get selected for some kind of project. So there might be one or two or many people for the same project that you have been applying. So there is the competition, but I have an insight for you that can make you take you the advantage of that thing, and you can get it can increase the chances of you getting selected for that project. So to know how to select your organizations, visit the previous year's GSOC pages and see which organizations participated in that. Like, let's say you have interest in image processing. So what are the tools that are used for image processing? Is that Python is used, R language is used, and much more sophisticated applications must have been used that which I won't be knowing, but you might know. There might be TensorFlow or anything. So visit these pages, see what organizations work on image processing, work with Python libraries, work with TensorFlow, and these things. Shortlist these organizations, select which you find the field of interest more closer to it. Selecting this, you will get if an organization fits in you, then you have the organization to apply to. And now I think you are allowed to submit up to 3 proposals in different organizations. So yeah, even if you find some difficulty in one organization, if you find there is much competition in one, you can also submit more 2 proposals with it. But yes, you will be allowed only for one project, of course. After selecting your organization, visit their web pages, visit the resources they have, see every information on their pages, what they have to tell about their project, how to start with the project, how to start with what they are doing on their project, and then you will have every information for the project to start. uh, yes, about the project you will be doing, you can come up with an idea if you know much things about the organization or the product the organization is working on. So let's say that, you have previously worked in TensorFlow and you know much many things in TensorFlow. You have already been in community and you have been talking to communicating with these people, and you've been knowing through this all the communication what is going on in the developer side of that product, let's say TensorFlow, and you know what kind of project you can do. Then you can directly mail them and say that I think this could be a candidate project for a GSOC, and I want to do that, and they will definitely help you if it could be considered as a GSOC project and it is selected, then it is good. But if you have no idea, then they have pages, they have information about, they have ideas about what project you can do for GSOC for their organization. I think almost all of these organizations which are participating in Google Summer of Code will have ideas page. So visiting this ideas page, and you can see what ideas you can do. You can select which one you understand better or you find it more interested in, and then you can start working on that project and having communication that I don't. If you have doubts, you can just communicate with their open source community and ask, I do not understand this project. Can you please elaborate? I want to work on this, and they will definitely help you. So this thing, the third point, communicating beforehand, is the most important thing I think you have to do. There will be application period to apply for these projects with a proposal in, I think, April. But communicating beforehand, way before, like this is January ending now, but you can start for the next year from right away. If you want to do next year, if you can't find any project right now, if you don't understand what project you should do. When I wanted to do project in GCC, and I was looking for a project, I couldn't find any because I didn't know anything about the intrinsics of compiler. That yes, we had the compilers course in our coursework, but that was just theoretical. And on the actual product side, in the how it is implemented in the language, it was very difficult to understand. So I approached to them. I asked them questions how to work with GCC, how to how to contribute in GCC, what kind of project I can do. Then I found a project. I worked on the project beforehand to understand how this project can be done. And with all that communicating, I got to understand how that project could be done. And then that information helped me to write the proposal. So communicating beforehand has very much advantages. So there will be on their organization's page, there will be communication means. They'll have like mailing list like the most common thing many of these open source organizations have. So these mailing lists are nothing but a group on your mail. So you will be added to the group in the mail, and you will receive all the mails that the community is communicating throughout, and you get to know what's happening inside the organization, and you can communicate. What happens is that if you directly communicate to the mentor, then the mentor might not know everything about the project or the community, because mentor isn't the one which knows everything about that, because there are so many big parts of a project that he might not know, and you might need help of other people. So posting on the mailing list that everyone can see what questions you have, what insights have you come up with, that will help. So mailing list is the most common communication channel. There are IRC channels, internet relay chats, like we have WhatsApp. So they have relay chats on the internet. So yes, they are also on Discord. You can also go on Discord and join their channel, communicate on that, ask questions. So another big thing about communicating beforehand that you get to know your project is that they will know that you are a candidate for the project. For example, if you start way before the GSOC starts, and you uh, communicate your interest in GSOC and ask the questions: how do I start with the project? How do I get to know the product first? Then you can then you get to know the environment the product is working on, the all the intrinsics of the project. Then you can you understand what the project needs, what needs to be done in the project. So asking all these questions, I will assure you, I assure you that people in the community, the mentors, will definitely help you in understanding what you need to understand for the project. And the biggest advantage of doing that, the people which are there in the community, which are in the organization, which are the mentor who will be reviewing your proposal, will know that this person is, yes, committed to the project. The person wants to do this project. So it will increase the chances of you getting selected. It's a big advantage when you have competition. So at my time when I was working way before. I was asking questions. I was working way before to know to know the GCC compiler, and due to continuous communication, and when the actual time came for application period, there was some other student or some other person who showed the interest in the same project, and my mentor simply said that someone is already working on this project, so try different project, and there was a big chance that I might get selected. And seeing this such kind of mail on the mailing list, I was assured that I will be selected definitely before even the proposal time period starts. So this is a big advantage. And yes, even though if you apply and you do not get selected and you keep working outside, yes, you will not get the uh, Google's certificate or the money, of course, but the experience and your exposure will open many doors for you of opportunities. Like yeah, well, I'll give you an example how this works. Let's say there are many people are working on this open source projects in India, and let's say you have been communicating and you have been working on some kind of project, even though you are not selected. If you are still working on these open source project, you keep communicating on the mailing list. Someday you might get some kind of a mail that someone has seen your work, or someone has seen that you have been trying to understand, you trying to work on some kind of project, and they want to hire you for their company that works on the same project. So that's a big step, because you don't have to apply for any kind of companies. A company is approaching you to get hired. It's a big thing. So actually working on the proposal, if yes, just like I said on the third point, that communicating beforehand will increase much more chances of you getting selected. Proposal doesn't then the proposal doesn't remain the most important part, but yes, it is the most important document that you have to submit to get selected. But when you know much of the things about the project, and then you can definitely write a good, precise and concise proposal for you to get selected. So for GSOC, you have only the proposal to write. There are no written tests or interviews or anything. Your selection will be solely based on the proposal that you write. So why it is important that it is the only document that you need to provide, and it will be the proof that you have done all the groundwork before to apply for a project, and to write, and the written documentation of what you know, and how you will be completing the project in the given time period, your timeline, that in the revaluation periods, what will you be submitting, what will you be what you will be doing in the future, and everything. So knowing this and reading such kind of complete proposal from the mentor side and the organization side will definitely increase the chances of you getting selected. uh, don't just yes also don't just write proposal on yourself and apply it on the Google's page. First, keep taking the inputs from the people in the community and the mentors. As you know, you must join the mailing list to keep communicating and to understand these understand the project. In the proposal, in the application time period, you keep sending the proposal and ask inputs, how you can, how you can improve the proposal, what should you add, what should you not add, what you should be having in the proposal to get selected. So your mentors and the people in the community will definitely help you to write a better proposal on that thing, on your project, and yes, it will, yes, increase your chances of getting selected again. There are some people who directly, without even communicating, directly apply, but these people know everything, what they are doing, what they are writing in their proposal, because maybe they are the PhD students which are working on that. And PhD students are work in depth in their own curriculum on some kind of project. So only PhD students apply directly with the proposal without taking any inputs. But yes, keep make sure that you ask for inputs in the community and your mentor. Yes, even then after you get selected, there will be project announcement that what students are have been selected, and there is a big span time period of about 15 to 30 days called community bonding period, and this is also an important time period. Before I go on, just have labeling things about this. Anyone have doubt? Any doubts? If anything is unclear, okay. So when the projects are announced, you will know that you have been selected, and there will be a time span of 15 to 30 days called as community bonding period, which is in which you are not supposed to do the coding part, but yes, you can do. It's not restricted for you. You can do the coding part, but you are not supposed to show anything about the coding part. You have to know, you have not, you don't have to prove that I have done some coding part. But in this community one way, you are supposed to know how the project works, how the community codes, what are the standards that are needed inside the community, how you should code, how you should not code, in what if it conforms to their coding standards. And to get, it's also a big time period to know much better about your code. You can plan ahead of what you should do to get successfully completed your project. So you should actually start working in the community bonding period itself, and communicate as much as with the community people and your mentor, especially in this period, and how are you planning to approach to coding in the further coding part. So in the coding part, yes, you start coding, start learning, and yes, start having fun. You get to know new things. You get to know how these things work, the underlying platform, the environment the project is working on, and keeping the don't stop communicating in this period too. Yeah, in the bonding, when the bonding period ends, it doesn't mean that you should not communicate. Keep regular communication with the mentors and the community. Keep asking doubts. If you have any smaller doubt, you can ask and they will help you out, and this will help you to successfully complete the project, and get to learn new things about the technology you are working on, and how to write good better code every time. To ask, if you keep asking doubts and communicating with your mentor and people in the community. Also there will be evaluations, I think 2 to 3. So do not forget about evaluations. You have to complete the evaluation to the website, and you will also receive the emails from Google to submit your evaluation. But don't forget to do those things. If you forget any of the evaluation, you will be failed right away. So don't forget to complete the evaluations from your side. And there is also thing that there is some mutual understanding between you and the organization and the mentors, that as you keep on communicating with your mentor and organization, they get to know you personally, you get to know them personally. And if you are having any difficulties to meet the deadlines of any evaluations, you can personally communicate to them that I am facing some difficulties, even though I have asked some doubts. So they are pretty much open to that. Yes, it's fine. You can do it later. And even though you can't complete the project in the whole coding time period, you can uh, stay committed to that project afterwards. Means they will say that yes, you have completely successfully completed the project, and yes, you will have the certificate from Google, but you can still keep on working on your project afterwards. So there are some flexible timelines for you to. So, mm, okay, so there are some other opportunities too if you don't get selected. So if you don't get selected, you have searched for many things and you get to know much better how a program works, how a product works, how to communicate in the community, how what is open source products, how does open source products work, and how to develop in such environment. So knowing these things is also a big point, and you can of course try next time. Even if you get graduated, there is also time for you to do this in the post graduation time. So there is just not GSOC. There are other plenty of such programs out there. So there's Google Season of Docs where you write documentations, and writing documentations will give you insight definitely for that product, and you can do GSOC next time. There is RGSOC for girls only, so to promote girls in the coding and programming environment. There is RGSOC, and there are much more of such things, much more. There is this link. I'll be sharing this PPT with you. So this link, there are so many such kind of uh, programs out there to do, and they will definitely give you stipends, rewards, and much more things, certificates to do this. Okay, any doubts yet? If you have any doubts related to GSOC, because I'll be moving on from the GSOC part now. So please ask any doubts if you have anything related to GSOC. If I have missed something to uh, say to you, if you have already searched some things and you have doubts that I do not understand how to approach that, please ask. Okay, with so much talking from my side, this
There,
must be getting okay. Okay, yes.
hello there, Roshan here.
Hello.
Yeah, actually, when we are when we have choose a particular organization, okay, and we have moved to the any of the GitHub repo, and we are started finding some of the issues. Which type of issues we should work upon, because there are some issues which have not been getting noticed or worked upon from last 2 to 3 years. So is it good to work on that kind of issues for that particular kind of project?
Uh, what do you mean when you say issues? Hello, am I audible?
Yes,
I'm
you are.
asking you what kind of, yes, I'm asking what kind of issues are you saying? It's some kind of bug is there in the project and you want to work on that, something like that issue?
Yeah, there I was working for some kind of application related thing, and some of the feature related issues. So, but these were the issues which were not uh, means commented by any of the other mentors of that particular project. So, sure, is
Okay,
it
so
good to work on that kind of issues right now
you mean
for
those issues
contributing
have not
purpose?
been touched? Okay, so you mean those issues have not been addressed or
Yeah,
touched
but
by
it has
any
been.
of those, and those are open for like open for a lot time? Uh, yes.
Yeah,
First
exactly.
of all, make sure that organizations will be participating in the GSOC by their side, because it's not confirmed that any organization that participated in the GSOC last time will definitely work this time. Some of those do not, because some kind of things, because they might have closed, they don't have any project for some kind of thing. So that's why I said communicating beforehand is a plus side. And like I said, if you keep learning, if you keep working on a project and that organization isn't selected, isn't participating in the GSOC, that would be a bummer. So communicating beforehand to know if that organization will be participating. They will communicate to you that yes, they will be participating in that. And on that participation, if you come to know that there are some issues, there are some features, there are some bugs that haven't been addressed for a long time, and there has been some communication going on, so there are some discussions going on that project, you can directly communicate with the communication means that they prefer, the organization prefer for kind of IRCs or mailing list. You can directly ask them if you are open, if you are will be participating for GSOC, or this particular kind of issue would be good for me to learn, would be a good starting point for me, or would be this some kind of issue would be a good uh, uh, project itself for GSOC. So asking them, communicating with them is the good idea. So whatever it be, let it be a new feature, let it be a bug fix, let it be a big bug fix, let it be anything that's going on, that's being discussed in the community is good. So I'm not the one who can say go with the bugs, go with the features. You should go with the organization, ask the people in the community for such things. Okay.
And sometimes these mentors don't react as fast because I have come for that particular kind of issues. I have addressed them on their IRC channel as well as some other Discord channels too. So they are not addressing, not reacting
Okay.
right now,
What happens
and
sometimes
they
is
are
that
not active too.
okay. No, what happens sometimes is that they might not be much active on Discord or IRC channels, because I also didn't use much IRC channels for chatting. These people are much more active on their mails. So yeah, try to reach out on their mail, or there is some chance that they have lost some interest in the project, and they will not be working further more on that project, and there is nothing to do much more. Something like that happened with my seniors, my friends, when I was doing GSOC, that they were working on a fuzzer for the GCC compiler itself called CSmith, and it was like the testing and validation for the compilers. It was called CSmith. So the people working on the CSmith had left working on it and were doing some different things. But the project, the GCC community itself needed some kind of things to be worked on with the CSmith itself, and these people were working on it. So they had to figure out these things all by themselves. They didn't have any help uh, from the developers who actually developed or worked on CSmith, because they weren't at all working on it because they didn't want to, they lost interest, or they might be busy, they might be very much busy on some different time, and they couldn't commit some time for that. So such things might happen, but those happen very rarely. So if you can't, I'd say try reaching out to them on mailing lists first. And if you still are not getting any replies fast or any interesting replies, so you can definitely go with different organization. There are much more similar kind of organizations, means there would not be only single one organization for some kind of, there might be something, but that would be very much particular type of thing, means like artificial genetics. So these are very rare to do that, and we don't even know how artificial genetics would even work. So these organizations which are very particular in such kind of project,
Okay.
much of the kind accept PhD students. So try different, if I'd say.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Okay. Fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything more? Yes, sure.
Hi, Tejas.
Hello.
I wanted to ask, like, let's say there is a person who want to apply for GSOC, and he had made several contributions on the organization's repository before applying for GSOC. And let's say he had made 3 pull requests, and 3 of them has got merged. So does it become a plus point while making a proposal?
Yes, definitely. It's a big plus point. You have your code has been merged into the main development line of that of a particular product or code. It's a huge plus point. But make sure you communicate with that. Means if you have written some code and just given some kind of pull request and they get merged, uh, yes, there will be these people who maintain these things, who accept your pull request and will know you, but that's not the only thing that will make you take the you can take advantage of such things, because the people who was maintaining this thing or was reviewing your code might not be the one who will be your mentor or will be knowing much of these G's of Google Summer of Code things. So you have to communicate on the mailing lists or the means they communicate, the organizations communicate, and you have to explicitly tell that yes, see this, I have been working on this, I have a merge commits myself, so I want to work on, please give me some more insights. And that's a huge plus point, definitely. And it's a huge plus point. And on your side also, if you get selected, you know much of the things about the project, and you are directly good to go on working directly on the project itself.
Okay. One more question.
Yes.
And okay, the first place when we start understanding the code base, the project's code bases are really huge and it becomes really overwhelming to understand in the first place. So do you suggest any common approach? Like
Yes.
how?
Yes, that same thing happened with me. GCC is a huge code base with millions and millions of lines and thousands of files, and uh, it's not just like that. It's a GCC means compiler which compiles the code. There are so many big things that even the experts in some kind of compilers won't know of this of other uh, part of that GCC. It's a huge code base to you there. It's not necessary to know everything in the project. Okay, if you are interested in some kind of project, you only need to know the uh, things which you will be needing to do that project. So yes, there will be a huge code base for some kind of things, and you will get overwhelmed. How can I start? I do not understand. So first and foremost thing is to contact the community itself, and that's how I started. I didn't know anything about GCC. I didn't know anything about compilers. I hadn't completed the compiler course in the coursework in the college. I just what I did is I saw uh, I saw an idea that was posted in the GCC. I thought that yes, this is something interesting that I could work on, and I just posted a mail on their mailing list that this idea was posted on the ideas page of your organization, and I'm interested in doing that, but I do not know anything. I am doing computer engineering. I know C++ languages. I have rudimentary knowledge about these languages. I do not know much about compilers, but I am interested. So they will definitely help you from bottom, how to know their code base, how to start, where to start. They will share you with you resources with you. They will share you insights, how to start, how can you get to know, how can you understand the code base, how to slowly start with the code base to know the code base slowly. There are also different approaches, like there will be some bugzillas. So what bugzilla is, there are bugs which people post on bugzilla if they find any bug, and those bugs will be resolved from developer side. So you can visit bugzilla and try to work on some kind of bug. You can ask in the community that there are some I want to do GSOC, but I do not understand itself, so can you point out to me some kind of bugs that are related to project which are easy to do by myself. So they will point out to you some kind of these resources, how to start, what bug you can work on to get to know such things. And doing these things all by your own will definitely help to know big code bases or even small ones which are complex and confusing.
Okay, so it's okay if we know only a few technologies from the entire tech stack while starting.
Yes, I didn't know anything about intrinsics of GCC when I started. Zero.
Oh,
But yes, you can build up by doing these things slowly.
oh, thank you.
Yes. Any more questions?
Hello Tejas, I just wanted to ask, On what basis did you choose GCC? Like, are there some
Hmm.
points that you need to focus on?
Just I said even how you should select an organization. The sole basis of selecting GCC for my organization is my interest. What my interest is in compilers, and I was wondering how C programs get lowered to machine language assembly, and how a processor understands this on a basic level. So I wanted to do that. Means I liked C languages much more than any other languages, and I wanted to contribute. I wanted to have some code contributed from my side in it. So that's why I selected GCC. That if you wanted to ask me, there are other things like LLVM is also a LLVM also a compiler. There is Boost C++ libraries which implement some libraries for C++ compilers. uh, I don't know. I knew GCC because we use GCC in our college level. We have been using GCC to compile our codes, and that's why I selected GCC. If we had been working, if we have been using LLVM or Clang, I could have applied to those two.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Also, another point is that Boost, let's say I take example, Boost C++ libraries is an organization which receives so much applications for their project. And one organization might select, on the back end of this side, organizations have to pay Google to select the slots, because let's say an organization selects two slots for themselves, so there will be only two students that will be working for that organization in the entire GSOC program. So they will accept only two applications on two different projects, or they might be same, but yes, they will at max apply. So the slots will are some points that to remember about, to think about, because Boost C++ might select, and it's not a predefined number that there will be 6 slots, 8 slots. They might select that on runtime on their requirements, that yes, they need more work to be done with students side, so they might select more. If they don't want more slots, so they may reduce the slots to 3, 4, 1, 2, anything they want. And such organizations receive so much applications, like 100 to 200 applications for a single organization. So you can also see how much applications that went in the previous years. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. You can apply 3 proposals. But just as I said, working on it beforehand, communicating beforehand, give you a big advantage, that organizations come to know that you are working and you are committed. So the chances of you getting selected increase. Okay. We have some more time later for Q&A, so I would go on. We have time constraints with us. So my GSOC project was add more math.h and complex.h function as built-ins. So this is the text here is just the abstract for my proposal. This is very much rudimentary text here. It goes on which in much more depth than what it is shown here. As the time constraints, I couldn't do there wasn't much of the things in the complex.h, but yes, there were things. I wrote some functions in math.h. So have you ever included math.h in your C or C++ program? Anyone? You must have.
Yes, many times.
Yes.
Yes, yes. And what for what functionality did you include it for?
For power function, square root, then for seal value, floor values.
Exactly. That's what I was waiting for. Seal, floor, and round functions. Let me just ask you some questions. Wait. Is it visible, the text?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So can you Can anyone tell me what the answer of for such round function? I think such functions are they were there in the curriculum, right? What round, seal, floor does. The floating point operation functions. Has
Yeah.
anybody used? Yes. So what would be the answer for this?
No idea for
Anyone?
it right
No
now.
idea. Okay, it's the floating point. It's a floating point operation where the rounding does. So the answer for this would be 4, integer 4. And for 4.6,
Should be
It will be
5.
5.
yes, I was waiting for that. Yes, it will be 5. Why is it so? So the reason only why is it so that the uh, function is wrote for such kind of application. So if it is less than 4.5, it will be rounded towards the 0 side, means towards the lower side 4. If it is 4.5 or greater than that, it will be rounded to towards the infinity. That means towards the greater side. So for the round 4.5, it will be also be rounded to 5. Uh, there are similar functions like to that, like seal, floor. What seal does is that it will give the ceiling. What means is that the greater the integer greater than the current floating point number, and what floor does is that it will get the lower integer number. So for even for 4.6, floor will answer 4 for you, because it will give the integer part lower than the past number. What I did is I implemented round even function. So the round even function is the floating point operation where it does similar kind of things how round does. So for 4.4, the round even will also round to 4. For 4.6, it will also round to 5. But for exactly halfway between numbers like 4.5 or let it be 5.5 or negative numbers, and so for exactly between midway between the integers 0.5 exactly, this function will round towards even, round to even numbers. Means for 4.5, the rounding would be to 4, but for 5.5, what round would do is it would give 6, but what round even will give is 4 for both of this. For 4.5 it will give 4, for 5.5 it will also give 4. Okay, so round even. So in this case I had to find out if uh, the decimal part or the floating point part, the mantissa for that floating part is exactly midway between. And I'll tell you, I took almost 15 to 20 days to understand how a floating point number is represented in the GCC compiler itself. It took a time, but after knowing that, it was easy. But yes, I had to work on a bit level. So that's why you need to know how binary numbers are represented, how binary function was, how floating point. I think there was IEEE 754 format there in the curriculum. 754 format for floating point numbers, how a floating point number is represented in binary and it is stored inside a memory for it. So uh, one should know these things. So there was round even. So there are some variants of round even, like round even, which would take a double as a no, as its uh, argument. There would be round even f there that would take a floating point number as there would be long double. There would be f128 for 128 bit long floating point numbers to round. And there were more functions like add, mul, as multiply, diff, sub. So these functions were to add the floating point numbers, but I think something like a equal to 4.1 plus 3.2 would definitely work, right? So why do we need add, mul, diff functions? The reason is that these functions were to the extensions to these things as lowering to the given part, means lower to past argument precision. So what does it do? That let's say I have add L add f. Let's say I have add f function, the variant for add. So what it does is, if I pass a double, double is a precision. So I pass double numbers to double precision number, floating point numbers. It will add them and give the result in float. So the resulting returning number would be in the float precision and not be in the double precision. So there are some things that should be taken that should be considered while doing this, because a double would be of like 64-bit long and a float would be 32-bit long, and there would be precision loss of remaining bits for the mantissa part, for the integer part, for the exponent part. So knowing these things would be is important part. So so I had these round even variants as built-ins, and I had to perform some optimizations on them, expanding them inline. You might not understand much of these things, but yes, i386 is the ISA for memory, the process architectures for the 32-bit machine. Then there's 8664 for 64-bit, which we use for AMD and Intel. There are some AR64 for ARM, and these math operations need to expand them. What I mean by expanding them inline is that there are some instructions in the processor itself. So there are instructions like add, move in the assembly language. So there are these instructions where we don't even need to call the functions that I implemented. One can directly have these instructions directly in the assembly rather than calling that. So like round SD, round PD, these are the instructions that are available for same functionality as round even provides. So so for the basic math operations, what the difficulty I had incurred is that there wasn't functionality available in the GCC itself, that a function is taking arguments in a wider precision and returning the function on a more smaller precision. There was nothing at all there, and I faced this difficulty that how can I do that, and the whole GCC community started discussing that how one can implement and what should be done, what not should be done by themselves, and the thread increased to more than 50 mails that added to that thread. And yes, such things happen, and I had to allot more time to such things. Then there are others, add from FP variants as built-ins. So these are much more complex functions. So I think we have time constraints and we have very much less time. So I think I should get to the next part. And here's a question for you on the floating point itself. It's an interesting question, very simple. So can you please answer? Please don't say any syntax error, compilation error. If there is, there isn't.
3.33.
Yes. Would that be correct? Okay. What's that 0.20 there before F in the placeholder for float? For double?
It is the number of characters after that decimal point.
Yes, the precision, how long the precision should be after the decimal part, right?
Up to 2 decimal point.
No, it's 20 there, right? So it should print.
It's 20 there?
Yes, it's 20, not 2. So
okay,
it would print. What would be the output then?
3.333 up to 23s.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the output that we get is surprising. Is it visible?
Yes.
And what happened for the last some digits? What happened to the 3 part, the recurring 3 part?
Overflow.
Not something like overflow. Overflow is kind of a thing that happens with the integer part, but the correct word would be here is that the limitations of precision, the precision loss is what we say. Okay, if we try to calculate 10 divided by 3 on a paper, we would go on with 3, right? But on the computer hardware level, what happens is that there is some bit precision limitations. So let's say even if this is a double, so it would be 64 bit long, but that doesn't mean we have 64 bits altogether. In IEEE 754 format, the most significant bit is allotted for sign bit. The remaining 23 bits are given for the integer part, remaining the exponent part itself, and remaining part the remaining bits are given for mantissa. What I mean by mantissa is the decimal part and the integer part of these things. So it's an interesting how to represent a floating point number in IEEE 754. Please read; it's very interesting. So we have less bits available with us. So while calculating this division, we don't get the precision what we want to. So that's why when printing such long this thing, we have precision loss at the end, we can see. If you don't see the output and you see this code itself, you say it's correct that it should give 3.333 altogether, but it doesn't happen. So that's why you should know the underlying limitations we have on the hardware part also. That is why we also learn how microprocessor works, what is the system architecture underlying, what OS we are running, what is the runtime environment for a program. These things matter. That's why we should know how to write a precise and concise program. And we ignore and we sometimes miss this thing. Such things happen. Does anyone know about this Patriot missile failure? What happens is that what a Patriot missile is, it's a defensive missile. If it senses some incoming missile, it will automatically launch itself to hit the missile and to prevent any loss from our side. So during the Gulf War, this is the American patriotic missile failed to launch itself because it failed to intercept the incoming Iraqi Scud missile. And what we incurred is that it killed 28 soldiers. And what was the problem here? Similar kind of problem that happened. When it booted up, it miscalculated the time from its boot with 1 divided by 10th part. So on a precision, when the precision was out of the bit length, let's say 20, the remaining precision loss, if I multiply this, let's say about this division 3.333, and if I multiply which much tens of times in much of the time, after some multiplication, the answer would be like incorrect, right? Because it's not 333, and that's because the miscomputation of such boot time, it couldn't find the Patriot missile. So no, these things we should know to avoid such drastic results. Okay, another question. What would be the output? This is also a simple one. I'll provide you some hints. The character C is just storing, it's just the C is the pointer which will be storing the address of A. That means C has the same contents as A, but C is not an integer, it's an character. And then there are the other pointer which is pointing to C, and we are printing the same contents which A has. So what's the output? Come on, just tell me the answer of size of int divided by size of char for, let's say, 4 bytes integer and 1 byte of character. Am I audible?
0.
Size of is dependent on the machine you are using, I guess.
Exactly. What do you mean to say then?
It works differently on different machines. Like I am using a 64-bit processor, its output will be different on a 32-bit processor.
No, yeah, I
Not
get
the
you.
processor,
I
but
get you. I get
the
you. Yes, yes, yes.
compiler which we are using for.
No, that's not the point of this point. Yes, you are correct. But let's say it's a 32-bit integer and a 8-bit character. Character is always 1 byte. So let's say 1 byte character. So size of int is 4. Size of char is 1, right? So for loop should iterate for 4 times, right? So what would be the output then? The for loop is iterating for 4 times, definitely, on a 32-bit integer wide machine. What would be the output? Anyone who agrees the output would be 0001? Okay, I give you the answer. It depends. On my machine, it's 1000. Why did that happen? Anyone have some other kind of machine with underlying different architecture would give answer 0001 for 32-bit same wide integer. Yeah, does anyone know why such thing happened? Okay, I'll give you the answer. The endianness. I think third year or fourth year people must be knowing what a big endian or little endian machine means. Come on, can anyone tell what is the endianness of a machine? You are on an online session, you can just alt tab and start a new tab to know what big endian and small endian is. I just told you, this is not a formal discussion. I just told you, I don't even feel like I'm a pass out. I'm just a student like you guys. So what the endianness of a machine says is that how the bytes are stored with the address. So in this case, my machine is little endian. What little endian means is that for the least significant byte, it will be stored at the starting address. Okay, so you know what least significant byte is? Let's say integer is a 4 byte wide. So the least my integer a is here is 1. So the representation of this in 32-bit is 00001 for 32-bit wide. Okay. So if it is 1 at the last bit, so the last byte would be 00001, and this last byte would be stored at the starting address in my 32-bit wide address. Okay. The least significant byte would be stored at the starting address in the storage in the memory, and remaining at furthermore the next 8 bits, 8 to 16 bits will be stored in the further address. Let's say address is 100, so at the 100th address there is 1, at the next address there is 0 because the bits, all 8 bits are 0, and so on. So if you write this code, this would run differently on different machines because of their endianness. So that's why you should know the underlying microprocessor architecture to know what you are actually doing and what the output would be. Okay. So coming on this processor parts. Yes, go on.
Yeah. So which machines have little endianness and big endian?
Yeah, that's the machine's descriptions. You can search and which are the machines which are little endian, big endian. You can run this program on your PC and find out if your machine is little endian or big endian. Or
Hello?
you can, yes.
Can you tell me what you are doing in the main second line? Char star C equals char asterisk ampersand A.
Okay, that's just a pointer. What we say?
You are typecasting the
Typecast.
integer to character and storing the character.
No. Integer itself doesn't get typecasted. When you say int a is equal to 1, the 1 is stored at the address where a is pointing to.
Okay.
At the machine level, there is nothing like a variable. There are only pointers. So the variable a, it represents a memory where one is stored. So when I say in the second line, char star, if I don't have that char star typecasting there, there would be warning or error that you cannot store the address of an integer into a character.
Into characters. Okay. Okay. Got it.
But to show how it works, it is possible, right? Because see in the printf line, the ptr is I'm printing is %d. That means it's printing an integer, even though ptr is of type of character, right?
Hmm.
You can do that because it's just a placeholder.
Oh.
So star ptr is pointing to c where c is pointing to. Okay.
Okay.
It's a typecast just to make sure the program won't tell me any warning or error that you are it's illegal to store the address of an integer into a character pointer. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So about the talking about the processor, I think we have less time. Or are you like? Is it something that does anyone know the time? It will automatically end the meeting for the 12 at 12:30. Will this meet end at 12:30 automatically or not?
Tejas, no, there is no such setting. You can go on for like.
Okay. So yes, this will take a little time, but those who are interested can stay here. I will try to go as fast as I can. But as I was moving towards processor, I am telling you that even though you in this time when we hear machine learning, AI, and image processing is the future, yes, there is so much to do in machine learning, AI, image processing, natural language processing, robotics, data analytics, analyst. Yes, there is so much scope, but that doesn't mean there is nothing remained for hardware part or systems, because as long as the computer is there, there will be processors, there will be system, there will be operating system, and to run your programs on it, there will be there will be compilers. So the future lies with hardware, as I have seen lately, because you must be knowing the Moore's law. What Moore said, that he proposed a graph which was a straight line going towards that. For each year, there will be increase in the transistors inside the same size of chip. It will go on, and for right now in a 7 nanometer chip, there are billions of such combinational circuits. But at later times, we see that there we incur some limitations, the power limitations. We can't provide much power. We have to see, we can't reduce much of the size because of heat constraints. So such things comes for such innovations. We need to come with newer architectures. Just like that, we have the computer architecture, COA, the processor architecture. We need to come with innovative things. Just like for right now, I'm taking just talking. We are moving towards machine learning part, and it takes so much time to learn learn a machine learning algorithm. So we are developing dedicated hardware to make faster, like TPUs. GPUs are we can use GPUs to faster to learn a machine learning algorithm. So there will be innovative. There is a need of innovative architectures at such sort in the software level, also at the compilers, and also at the processor level also. So hardware is also at the future here. So staying up with the technology and to innovate and to innovate in the future, it is necessary to know how these things work all in what we see in the curriculum. So I see how a processor works. The processor we have seen for a long time in our college time, that we start to learn C, and then we get to know how processor works and get to work in write some codes in assembly language. But we have never visited it in a bottom up level of abstraction. So at the lowest level, what there is voltage. If it's 0, then it's 0. If it's 0.3 or 3 volts, that it means once. So the lowest level of abstraction is bit in the binary format. So in the binary format, it is implemented in MOS technology, CMOS technology, metal oxide semiconductor, a single metal oxide semiconductors would implement this 0 or 1. Then the combination of these CMOS gates would make gates. The combination of gates, logic gates, will make combinatorial circuits. Then these combinatorial, with the combination of these combinatorial circuits, logical combination, you can make a processor architecture. And after processor architecture, you can make non-persistent memory. That means the registers present on the chip, the caches and the interfaces that happen. Then there is persistent storage, which store these binary numbers in its memory. Also, there are some abstractions levels on that binary level. That okay, hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes. लाईट गेले होते, माझं वायफाय डिस्कनेक्ट झालं, सो त्याच्यामुळे जरा वेळ लागला. बट ओके, थँक्यू फॉर वेटिंग. इफ should I go on with it? It's past 12:30 now.
I think we could wrap it up. If anyone has any questions, you can tend to them.
Okay, sure. So you can ask any questions. Be frank. Ask any type of question, any kind of question. It would be anything related to this session or any general questions related to engineering or these subjects.
There was a question from my side, Roshan here.
Yes, go on.
Yeah, actually, I have decided to contribute to at least 3 of the organizations, but right now I am having 4 organizations, and I have started contributing to them from last 1 month. So, but sometimes it gets confused whether to move with any one of the organization, or should I go on contributing to all the 3 of them among the 4.
You are allowed for 3 proposals, right? So you can apply for all 3 of them.
But
you
then,
can if you want to. But if you, it also depends upon your interest. Then what your interest lies in. If you have some more interest on some one kind of organization, then you can focus on that one. But you can't decide. You are interested in all 3 of that, and you are ready to work on any one of that. Then you can apply for all of them.
Okay, but the level of contributions then goes on decreasing now. If I'm targeting any particular project of that organization, so it will be sometimes it's better to contribute to one project a lot rather than having legs on.
You mean your time is being divided on the focus on 3 different than focusing on single one, right?
Yeah.
If I could chime in right now, if you don't know, I'm actually pursuing my project for Google Season of Docs. While applying, there were many organizations that were actually participating, but I only applied to one organization, even though it was a very well-known organization, and there were many people who were trying to get into it. But what I did was I had the chance to apply. I had the chance to make 3 proposals. So I made all of the 3 proposals to the same organization, and I included my their capstone project in my organization, in my proposal. So even if the lower ranked projects don't get accepted, the higher ranked project does get. So you can see into that and apply accordingly if you want, Roshan.
Yes, Roshan. If you would hear that, it's possible.
Okay, so
you can apply if you have one organization in mind that you want to work with, you can make 3 proposals for if they have 3 projects. That is.
Yeah, I
Yes.
got that. Yeah.
So that
Yes, like
increases your
if you want to
chances
decide
exponentially.
yes. If you want to decide among 3 organizations, that it depends upon what your interest lies in, which one you can do better, or which one you want to do. Yes, but you can't, because you can't work on 3 open source projects. Means, yeah, officially you can do Google Summer of Code in one of those projects, and unofficially you can still keep contributing on other tools. It's
Yeah,
not like that
but
you
to
can't
be on the
contribute if you are
safer
not
side,
selected.
yeah. Okay, got that.
Yeah, on the safer side, if you are interested and you want to focus on single one that you are like confident in that you might get selected, then you can do. Or yeah, you can also have some 2 proposals as a backup, that if you are not much sure, you can apply on for more 2 of those.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything more? Like anything we can discuss, anything that should not be very much technical. काही पण चालेल. कोणाला इंटरेस्ट आहे पुढचं का? माझ्या काही स्लाइड्स राहिल्यात, LLVM IR चे इंट्रोडक्शन, एनिथिंग मोर टू दॅट? बराच वेळ झाला तसा, आणि शनिवार वीकेंड, तसे तुम्ही आता घरीच बसलेले असताल मोस्टली. कॉलेज चालू झालं का
नाही, अजून नाही.
अजून? मग काही आयडिया आहे बोलवणार कधी
कॉलेजला?
कारण की हळूहळू चालू होत आहे ना आता, स्कूल्स पण चालू होत आहेत वाटतं लहान
हा, फर्स्ट फेब पासून तरी होईल नॉर्मली. म्हणजे मुंबई युनिव्हर्सिटी तरी झाली आहे चालू.
हा, अच्छा. नाही, तुम्ही आता तरी घरीच आहेत, मग तुमच्या जर आरामात चालू असेल सगळं, शनिवारचा एवढा वेळ गेला, तर कोणाला थोडाफार इंटरेस्ट असेल तर IR बद्दल सांगू शकतो, किंवा मग संपू शकतो आपण इथेच.
सुनंदा, तू सांग.
कोणाला डाऊट्स नसतील तर आय थिंक संपू शकतो.
राईट. तुझी फायनल स्लाइड दाखवू शकशील टू कॉन्टॅक्ट पीपल?
त्याच्यात काही नाहीये, मी ऍड काही केलं नाही. बट
ठीक आहे, वी कॅन
लिंक्डइन
सेंड
वरती
अ
आहे.
मेसेज ऑन द. हा, शुअर.
कोणाला इंटरेस्ट असेल कंपायलर्स मध्ये तर सांगा मला, किंवा मी कंपायलरच्या ग्रुपमध्ये ऍड करू शकतो. व्हॉट्सअप मध्ये आहे चालू.